When we are unable to find tranquility within ourselves, it is useless to seek it elsewhere. La Rochefoucauld. They're resetting the system as we speak. Please keep your friends and family aware. Like, subscribe, share these videos. Please remember that I am not a financial advisor.
Oh, yeah. And it's interesting, I think, sort of that you have Michael Barr, who understands Ripple, and you have Lael Brainard, who's been supporting research on it, and you have Yellen, who's interested in inclusion. You've got various pressure points where in this administration we could see stealthy progress. It looks like a very radical thing, but I can imagine us introducing some kind of very limited digital currency quite soon, and it growing, and it being a force for change, of course, in the financial system as a whole.
Gary Gensler, Chris Brummer, and Michael Barr are all new to this administration, are in positions of power, and they're pro-crypto.
Well, I think it makes sense for central banks to be looking at it, and I'm aware that the Federal Reserve is looking at it. I gather that people at the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston are working with researchers at MIT to study the properties of it.
Janet Yellen is not a fan of Bitcoin, but she is a fan of central bank digital currencies.
Well, in the U.S., currently, the Fed does not have the authority to limit any private digital currency. So right now, that's not even within the scope of our powers. Now, Congress could also take different steps, but I don't see any reason why there can't be a coexistence of a central bank digital currency in many of the forms of payment, traditional payment rails in the U.S., but also cryptocurrencies. It really just depends on the individual currencies and how they operate. But I see no reason that a lack of coexistence shouldn't exist. In addition to that, we're also looking at not deploying 30 more, but looking at 30 more platforms. They could be distributed ledger open source. They could be private sector initiatives. But we're trying to understand what's the possible suite of technologies that could possibly support a CBDC, just say over the next 2 years or so, our research is going to take us.
A suite of technologies will be rolled into a package for the digital dollar. Is it possible a few public ledgers are wrapped into the digital dollar?
There is the stimulus that is needed around the world because the world is in this unbelievable, exceptional situation. And the stimulus is needed now. Janet speaks from a position where she's now Secretary of Treasury, and she goes big with Fiscal. When I said no limits and we have to go fast and we have to go big, that was back in March, I was speaking from a position of central bank governor. What is characteristic of this particular crisis is that we go hand in hand. Fiscal and monetary did not work so well together back in 2008 or 2011 in Europe. And very often you heard the central bank governors saying, it cannot just be about monetary policy. We are not the only game in town. You don't hear that anymore. Because both on the fiscal front and on the monetary front, policies are working hand in hand and are really laying the ground for recovery to take hold after we are done with that period where economies have switched off.
To successfully manipulate an economy, there needs to be more fiscal policy. This is precisely where a digital dollar would shine. Note that the Treasury and Fed were designed to be separate to avoid this type of plan.
Currencies, central bank digital currencies, postal banking, and so on. I don't expect that to happen overnight, but I do think that there are interesting pockets of support for this idea. Lael Brainard is sponsoring research on this. FedNow is not exactly the same thing, but that's coming, that's happening. So that the Fed is sort of engaging, and it's engaging partly because the UK and China are engaging. Secondly, it is attractive to the likes of Sherrod Brown and to progressives because it has the potential to help you reach to reach the unbanked.
Order payments and the opaqueness of that process, and I guess it's also error prone to some extent with SWIFT. Santander seems to be trying to approach it with a partnership with Ripple. Just curious what your thoughts are on that.
So I do think that of the use cases out there, cross-border is one of the most compelling. We know that intermediation chains cross-border are long and quite opaque, and they're slow, and they can be quite costly. So my sense is that technology with the appropriate safeguards could make a material impact and likely will. And it may well be through a partnership model. I don't want to pronounce on any particular approach, but there are a variety of partnerships out there that are trying to innovate and to reduce frictions and increase transparency for those cross-border transactions. In my sense, I'm fairly optimistic that there are some good solutions out there that don't necessitate a global stablecoin.
The public and private sector are partnering up, and they want a fair system, an inclusive system.
You know, we do have a problem with financial inclusion. Too many Americans really don't have access to easy payment systems and to banking accounts. And I think, you know, this is something that a digital dollar, a central bank digital currency could help with. You know, I think it could result in faster, safer, and cheaper payments, which I think are important goals. But there are a set of issues around central bank digital currencies that have to be examined. What would be the impact on the banking system? Would it cause a huge movement of deposits out of banks and into the Fed? Would the Fed deal with retail customers or try to do this at a wholesale level? Are there financial stability concerns? How would we manage money laundering and illicit finance issues? So there's a lot to consumer protection, a lot to consider here, but it's absolutely worth looking at.
Janet's goal is helicopter money, and a digital dollar is a tool she's going to use.
Thank you. Maybe you can just tell us about the overall market infrastructure changing as a result of DM going live. So it's one piece of many changes like the RTGS renewal programs, FedNow, some more novel payment system upgrades we're seeing, even in cross-border payments, say Ripple or Swift GPI changing. So how does DM kind of position itself in, say, nationally and for cross-border payments?
I would say that, first of all of these improvements, especially the ones on the public sector side, are extremely beneficial. You know, in a sense, they make a network like DM more useful because there will be more ways that you can come on and off and use some of the DM features. In general, I think, you know, there's a broader push towards more efficient, cheaper payments. I think there's a number of challenges when it comes especially to cross-border related to harmonization. I think the FSB stablecoin group has done really fantastic work in trying to drive an agenda towards harmonization of laws and regulations. What will have to be seen is essentially how much will that translate into each jurisdiction. We think that for this to be successful and all these efforts to really make a dent on, for example, the cost of cross-border, we will need more uniform rules so that, you know, a payment network in one region can really communicate and interoperate with one in another region.
As we move forward with digital dollars, so do regulations. As digital currencies become the norm, the more attractive RippleNet is for the banks. The more attractive cryptos with the utilities are for institutions.
I do think we need to think about international interoperability so that we can fix some existing problems today, such as retail or wholesale cross-border. So I think those are all important aspects of it to make sure that it is distributed. As far as the money supply, just like the money supply today, the Federal Reserve determines what has to be in circulation to meet the needs, and the same would be with the CBDC. Just because it's digital doesn't mean like it's an endless supply, it can become inflationary. You know, it's really something that can be controlled, but within the existing ecosystem. So we don't see a CBDC being digital as really changing the monetary policy tools of the U.S. and not changing how much cash would be in circulation. I think that's a function of need and can be controlled.
Each nation's digital currency is a walled garden. Moving value from one walled garden to the next is key.
When Janet Yellen, who of course is a good friend of yours and that you know well, when she says she wants to go big with a 1.9 trillion stimulus package, and you say no limits, of course, in relation to, I mean, is her go big your no limits? And I wonder whether people are now saying, I know this sounds weird when we're in the middle of it, but people are saying there's too much stimulus about to be launched around the world.
There is the stimulus that is needed around the world because the world is in this unbelievable, exceptional situation. And the stimulus is needed now.
Monetary policy is no longer effective. They're about to step it up with digital currencies. A refusal of praise is a desire to be praised twice. La Rochefoucauld. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy my work and wish to support my channel, please consider joining my Patreon. Remember to hit the bell.